Today we're going to set up Rook using Ceph, and we're going to do it with the app catalog in under 5 minutes. So let's get started. So what do we need to begin with? First of all, we need a cluster deployed, and we need to meet the prerequisites. So with this cluster, I've got a single master with 3 worker nodes. I've got worker 2, 3, and 4 running on virtual machines. I've also got the storage configured for each of them. So for VMs 2, 3, and 4, I've got a secondary disk that is 100 gigabytes. So that'll give us 300 gigabytes for our Ceph cluster. So what do we need to do to get started? What we're going to do is go to the Ceph docs for Rook, and we're going to copy the Helm repository, and we're going to add it to the app catalog. So copy that. Let's go over to our PMK setup, and we're going to go to apps. We're going to go to repositories. We're going to add a new repository. We're going to name it Rook, and we're going to put in the repository URL, and we're doing it for the Rook demo cluster. All right, so what that's going to give us is 2 different things we can deploy, which is going to be Rook Ceph, which is the operator, and then Rook Ceph cluster, which is going to be our cluster. We're going to use the defaults, except for one configuration change in the Rook Ceph cluster so that we can use the toolbox. So hit deploy. We're going to name this Rook Ceph. We're going to put it on our Rook demo cluster. We're going to create a new namespace for it, and we're going to call it Rook Ceph. All right, we're going to wait for that namespace to create. We're going to select the namespace. We're going to leave all this to default just because we're going to show how to deploy it, but you can also make configuration changes in here if you have different requirements. So let's hit deploy, and we're going to wait for that to finish out. Should just take a minute or two. So while this is finishing out, make sure you like and subscribe our videos. Let us know what kind of content you'd like to see. All right, now that that's finished, what we're going to do is we're going to deploy our Rook Ceph cluster. So hit deploy, we'll name it Rook Ceph cluster. We're going to name Rook demo for the cluster, and we're going to use the Rook Ceph namespace, leave the version default. So now this actually sets up a couple of things. So it's going to have Ceph block pool, so we'll have block storage. It's going to also set up, let's see, further down here, it's going to set up file system and then object as well. We're not going to use object or file system, we're just going to use block. But we're going to let it go ahead and deploy it since this is like the default setup. You can modify this by removing it and then making sure that you have the storage class disabled. But the only thing that we're going to actually, so here's a storage class right here. If you said false, then it's not going to add the storage class in there. But what we're going to do is we're just going to make one change. We're going to go down here to the toolbox, and we're going to say true. And what that's going to do is let us deploy the toolbox so that we can actually run Ceph status and see what's going on with the cluster. So let's go ahead and hit deploy, and then we'll wait for that to finish out. All right, that has finished out. So now we can see both of these if we go to deployed apps and we select the Rook Ceph namespace, and we'll see that they're deployed. We can also go over here and we can run list and the namespace for Rook Ceph, and we can see both of the deployments here. Okay, so now what we want to do is we can get all of the resources that are within it. Okay, get all namespace Rook Ceph to see what the status is. So then what we can do to see what's going on with the cluster is get Ceph cluster and namespace Rook Ceph. And this is going to tell us what's happening right now. So right now it's configuring Ceph monitors. All right. And then to actually get in and see what the status is once it's done, we can find the toolbox. So get pod namespace Rook Ceph, and then here is our toolbox. So we can do is exec it, the name of it, namespace Rook Ceph, and then Ceph status. There. So right now it's actually still building. So this isn't going to finish out until we have all of the OSDs and everything up, and this will then tell us how much space we have and what the current status is. So let's go ahead and look at the status again. So we got the OSD status showing 100 gigs from each of those. Let's look at the Ceph status itself. And we can see we got 3 OSDs up, 3 in, and health okay. All right, so that means we can go ahead and start creating volumes. We'll take a look at the UI real quick and look at storage classes. And we should see the storage classes created. So like I said earlier, we created it for all 3, but you could set it up just to have block and then just have the block storage class. All right, so now that we have our storage classes, we can go over here and we can look at our PVC YAML, And we can see that we're doing Ceph block, 5 gigs. Let's go ahead and create that. And then if we look at our pod YAML, we can see that we are claiming RBD PVC and we're mounting it to varlib www.html. So let's go ahead and create that. And the container creating, let's look at our PVCs, bound. So wait for our pod to finish creating. Just take a moment. All right, now it's running. So what we can do is kexec. We'll go into demo pod. We'll do bin bash and dfh. We can see that we have that volume mounted right here. So we've got mounted varlib www.html, and that's the 5 gig claim that we made. All right, so if we exit out of here, let's go ahead and create a larger one. So we'll create a 20 gigabyte claim, and we'll create a pod claiming that 20 gigs. We'll check out the pods and we'll wait till they're done creating, and then we'll take a look in there and show the same thing. All right. Let's take a look. And 20 gigs. And look at our PVC. We've got both of these set up and we're good to go. We've actually got everything set up on all the disks. If we go to one of the virtual machines, what we can do is list it out, and we can see that Ceph is actually running on VDB. All right, so that's basically it. That's the setup. You can go in and you can customize your settings. You can go to the Ceph docs, and there are configuration options for a lot of these. So like if you look at the cluster itself, you've got a bunch of different configuration options, so you can make some changes and pick what you need. For us, we just stay default, right? But you can do storage class disabled if you don't want to show certain things like object storage, or if you don't want to show file storage, you just want to show block storage instead. So you can make all those changes. And that's about it. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions or anything, be sure to reach out. Please hit like or subscribe and comment on the videos. Let us know what other kind of content you'd like to see, and we'd be happy to hear from you. Also, check out one of these 2 videos up here. They might be related to what you're watching right now, and they may be interesting as well. So we're going to keep creating content related to our product and Kubernetes ecosystem. And check back or subscribe and keep up to date with the latest things we put out. Thanks.